Thanks for joining us for another edition of Take Two. This is Heidi Hatch with KUTV 2 News. Maura Carabello with the Exoro group in the house. Thanks for being with us.
Nice to be here on this this is the most pleasant time of the year, I think. You know, high 70s, low 80s. We're a little high today.
Yeah, it's a little warm.
Yeah.
Joining us also today for the first time on the podcast is Liddy Huntsman, running currently for the Salt Lake City Council. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I thought the two of you in all the world you run in would have met, but this is your first time meeting, so this is fun.
I'm sure we've had dinner or something.
I feel
the world is very small here, so
I feel like we do know each other,
Yeah.
but this is a reuniting.
A reuniting, yes. I've learned in all of my years with meeting people, I always say good to see you, because when I say nice to meet you, it always ends up that somehow I've met them, and then they feel bad, and I'm like, oh, it's the worst.
You learn fast when you say the wrong thing, so now it's just good to see you.
Good to see you, yes, which is a good line.
Yeah.
Did you do anything fun for Labor Day, Maura, or did you just work? Labor.
We were busy with a bunch of small things, which was fun, right? Some gatherings, and then some house responsibilities. So it felt like it went too quick. Yeah, we adulted a lot. I caught up with a person I hadn't seen for 25 years. That was very fun.
Ooh, I love that.
I'm gonna because it's a podcast, which can be spicy.
Yes, we can.
He chose this location, and it's a lovely restaurant in Orem, and it serves pho, and it's the king of it. So their name is Pho King. I'm going to put a pause there because
I love it.
They have one of those in West Jordan too, and I said it out loud the other day, but I thought it was like an FU King.
Yes, because it sounds like that, which is I put the pregnant pause in the middle so you wouldn't be bleeped by the FCC. Yeah, it's the faux King.
We have no rules here.
Memes. Those are my favorite memes.
Yeah,
all
they're
of
good
those
stuff.
faux places
Good
are
stuff.
so creative.
Yes, and Liddy, you're into fun, so you can have fun with us here too.
I
You
try to be
moved
fun.
from being a comedian into mom life, and now running for office. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to run, how long you've been back in Utah, and what you're up to.
So I say, listen, I'm a self-proclaimed failed comedian, so this was kind of my next best gig. But really, I moved back here 4 years ago. We were living in the Dominican Republic. So I've been gone from Utah probably the last 10 years, and we were living in New York and off and on New York and Dominican Republic. And I just was missing home. I was telling you a little bit earlier about the Dominican Republic. When you live in a different country or a different place, that is, you see the culture, the vibrant culture that they have. They're so prideful of who they are. And I kind of sat down there and said, well, what's my culture? When you get your familiarity and community stripped from you, then it's really easy to say, okay, where is that? And the only place was Salt Lake City for me. So I obviously have been very active in the community with advocacy work, and I just wanted to make a difference. So for me, this race was kind of the next best thing for me. The thing that I loved most about it was not only is it the most local election you can do, but it's nonpartisan. And I'm very proud to be unaffiliated, because I don't believe that political parties or special interest groups should own a community's voice. So as I'm here a mom, right, and I'm now diving into budget and things like that, I'm realizing how much more of an independent outsider voice we do need downtown. So that's really what's pushing me to run.
Maura, we've talked about on the podcast before that sometimes people look at the Salt Lake City Council and they say it's the most diverse of all the councils out there.
Yeah.
But it's not as diverse as you think it might be, because it seems like a lot of the voices are on the same page.
Yeah, I'm a proud Salt Laker, right? So I'm invested in not only living here, but also sort of what Salt Lake represents in the landscape and climate of Utah. But I have been a little, so these are my friends, but when we do say there's so much diversity in Salt Lake City, know that we're a majority minority council, and that's awesome. There are tons of good things to say about being a majority minority, but diversity means there's a lot of different opinions at the table, and I do think that we could use a little competition for ideas in Salt Lake City, just because everyone is at their best when there's slightly different points of views. It's not preferencing one over the other. So we are a majority minority here, and I do think that Salt Lake has a really strong position and a strong voice, and but we are a growing, changing city. We're the capital city. There's a lot more dynamics going on. I was really excited to see this year there are a lot of challengers, and there's a lot of action on both the citywide races and the district races. And so I think that's really good. I think people are engaged, and I think a ton is going on in Salt Lake City. As you know, I'm a proponent for a little bit of change right now in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. And you're running, this is not an open seat. The council member's running, and there's 5 in your race?
Yeah, there's 5. I mean, this is
a ton.
I feel bad for Chris. I don't think he realized how competitive it was going to be, but this is what democracy is about. And when you look at kind of what's going on downtown and you see that the votes for the mayor are always 0 to 7, there needs to be some sort of shift and renewal.
Yeah.
And I think the greatest part about democracy is renewal. So I think that we need more renewal downtown.
Yeah.
We're in an off-election year when you do municipal elections. My city doesn't even have one, which makes me feel sad this year because I love having an election. Are people willing to listen when you're knocking on their door, or are they just over politics right now and they want a breath?
So when I go and talk to people, I've knocked on 900 doors so far, and I hope to knock on every single door that I can. But people are really frustrated. I've gone up to a couple doors where someone said, I yesterday told myself that I was done with politics. And when I come to the door and say, listen, I also hate politics. That's why I'm running as unaffiliated. I think that we need more people. Like, that's the whole point is city council is a nonpartisan race. Therefore, it should be treated as such. So I want to be able to bring that optimism back to District 3, which I love and born and raised in. But yeah, I think we definitely need a little bit different outsiders.
So our listeners are too wonky to need this, but I would remind anybody listening, if they're like, what the heck, do I have municipal elections this year? I mean, I would just remember that a lot of us went through primary elections several weeks ago, and in Utah, you get to still choose between ranked choice and primaries. Salt Lake City is ranked choice, so if you're listening, get excited about ranked choice. Like, do a little bit of research because it's really pro-voter. If you just take a minute to figure out your strategy, it's really pro-voter because it's not black or white. It is shades of, you can rank the people you want. You can think about, if this is my first choice, though, who would I be satisfied with? And it does allow you to have a little more depth in your discussion about it. And I mean, municipal elections are the best because they should be less about politics and more just about services and community. And so Salt Lake has ranked choice, which is why we still haven't voted yet. Yeah. Some of you did vote in a primary, and then you will also have a general election. So we will have quite a few races to vote on in November. And you can head over to your local county clerk. If you can go to your city too, but bless the city's websites. It depends on the city you land on. But you can always go to your county clerk, and your county clerk will point you to which municipalities have races.
And you like the ranked choice voting? Because I know it's a love-hate relationship.
It's a love-hate, but I think in terms of an election like the one that I'm in right now, and I believe that ranked choice, this is the last election.
Right.
For ranked choice. So,
which a lot of people love. It kind of got caught up in some right of center politics this last year, and the legislature put a pilot program together. If you listen to the research about the local voters, they kind of love it. It is caught up in a political bit at the state level, so the state, I think, is going to put the kibosh on it for the local jurisdictions.
Yeah, it is interesting because there are elections where you go back and look at some of the gubernatorial races, like when your father was running, when there's so many people in it. I actually think it would have been interesting to see in a race like that where ranked choice voting was involved. So yeah, this is interesting. Yeah. And her father, if you don't know the relation, he used to be the governor of Utah and also former ambassador. So there you have it, in case you're new to this podcast and new to politics.
I've been a fly on the wall for a lot of situations. So.
Yes.
Ooh, situations is good. I know you can come out with your book someday. So since we have you in here today, I wanted to talk about some Salt Lake-centric issues, and it just happened to be that we've been kind of waiting on word this, but actually yesterday, there was an announcement of the new 1,300-bed homeless service campus in Salt Lake City. This is basically a remaking of what they undid in Salt Lake City. In 2018, 2019, they got rid of Rio Grande. It was a property that I think a lot of people wanted in Salt Lake City. They split up, spent tens of millions of dollars to move them to different parts of the county, and that failed. Now we're starting again. Maura, first on this issue, are we just throwing money at the homeless issue and we're not going to fix it throwing money, or are they moving back to the right option and we just got waylaid by splitting them up into different universes before.
So the good news is the numbers around the unhoused are manageable. Bad news is we're not managing them yet. And so I love the one campus model. I have felt it. And so my holy grail on this is whatever model we choose, could we get it over the finish line? So those who are still excited about the distribution model were probably really frustrated with that we didn't actually fulfill the model. I don't like that model. I think the one campus model is a little better. Where it varies from the road home, or I don't mean that to be pinned on that nonprofit, but where it varies from the past is it is about wraparound services, and that's going to be the key. The one thing I'm a little leery of is the devil's in the details. So Havens for Hope in San Antonio is this really nice, robust model. Havens for Hope is just under 2 miles away from their downtown core. Where we have chosen, which huzzah that we've chosen a site, like it's an imperfect process of choosing a site. I think it has to be in the city because that's the preponderance of the population. And proximity matters for people who don't have transportation, who have mental health issues, who have lots of other challenges. This is about 8 miles away. So one of the things we've got to figure out is how do we transport people to those services we need? That is a totally accomplishable thing. I think we can accomplish all of it. I am not a fan of the finger pointing. I think a leader our mayor, who has been in office for plenty of time, her mantra of, I can't give a leadership vision because I don't have support. Hey, bust on the state all we should. The state needs to step up. The state needs to provide the economies of scale. I totally agree with the notion that the state needs to give financial support, but that is not a leadership position to just whine about the fact that no one's giving you money. So I'm going to differentiate that I don't support the lack of leadership. I felt like the city has had this kind of like, we can't deal with it because we don't have the money, isn't leadership. Salt Lake City's main thrust in this argument is public safety. That's sort of the statutory obligation of the city. The county really has some responsibilities with mental health, so does the state. The state should take some responsibility with helping us with FF&E, which they say is like, Wayne Niederhauser said it's going to be, plus 30 million a year. So this is...
But it's not guaranteed.
Right, and this is an instance where resources help.
Very worrisome.
Yeah, resources matter. This isn't throwing money at a problem. Resources matter, but I love the campus model. I think it's been proven successful time and time again if we can fully execute, which means funding as well.
Are voters talking about this?
Well, yes, and I think that we saw this morning that voters were absolutely in a tailspin because they were kept out of this. And that's where I have to put my foot down and say, I don't believe that this should be a backdoor kind of situation, private closed door. I think we keep seeing this over and over again within the city and the state, and the people that get the brunt of it are the people, the voters. So I would love more transparency when it comes around homelessness. It is a 99-year lease. So how are we going to keep that up for 99 years, right? Where is the money that's going to fund it? Where is that going to come from? But most importantly, what I'm running on is talking about mental health and public safety within downtown, because anyone that's downtown understands that we're in a mental health epidemic and crisis with the homeless. But from the research that I've done, I've gone out with 4th Street Clinic. Obviously, homelessness is so layered, but it continues to be a revolving door. And that's where if we keep opening, closing, rebranding homelessness, we're already up 18% this year in homelessness. Yeah. And this campus is not going to be built until 2027. So that for me is saying, okay, well, we should have done this a couple of years ago, right? But now it's going to be very difficult, I think, to keep up and to clean up what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question is what happens in the next couple of years? We talk about this before. Maura and I both work in the downtown area, and I love walking around in between newscasts, getting a breath of fresh air, and sometimes it's great, and sometimes you're like, should I nudge this person? Are they dead or alive? There's still a needle in their arm. And so there are problems in Salt Lake City that are lingering. Is there a way that you see that you can fix that in the next couple of years?
So when you ask, people ask, why are you doing this? What's getting you out the door, right, to go and campaign? So how this kind of all came to be was a couple of years ago. Obviously, anybody that's downtown, working downtown, living downtown, you see there's a problem. And for me, I like to figure out a solution for the problem. So I started saying, why can't we figure out this revolving door? So then I got really into law enforcement and trying to understand their angle from it, and studied this program out of Dallas called the Right Care program. And what they do is they have a mental health task force, which is a law enforcement and a social worker that go around in a car together, and they go, here we have MCOT and different programs, but I dream one day of having a mental health task force downtown. I think that's really what we need. If 40%, so another hobby of mine is I love listening to police scanners. 40% of those calls are mental health. So we've got to do something, because police are only trained to detain, not de-escalate. So that, for me, I think that's the biggest thing that's missing within downtown.
That's a weird hobby. I listen to them all the time at work because I have no choice.
But not a hobby.
But yeah, not a hobby.
Not a hobby.
Yes, but I can't stand silence because of that random fact about me. When I'm at home, I'm so used to listening to the scanners that I constantly have to have music or something on. And my husband's like, can we just have silence for a minute? And I'm like, no, it makes me anxious.
Police scanners on all the time. My kids are like, what? I'm like, I'm doing laundry. I just need to
just need to listen.
I just need something to block out, my mind.
Where did you pick up that habit from?
You know what's so crazy is, long story. My grandparents, they were here, they were sick, they passed away. I was kind of grieving and I was like, I just need something to just take away all kind of the craziness in my mind. So at 2 a.m. when I would wake up and just feel, I would turn on the scanner, and it just kind of became a therapy. But then I started realizing I'm a trender, so I like to pick up on patterns. And I'm like, oh, wait. And then now it's addicting. Now because I'm continuing to hear what I'm hearing, which is 40% are mental health calls, whether it's domestic violence or something like that. And so I'm realizing if more people listen to the police scanners, maybe we can figure out what's actually going on the streets.
Yeah, there's a lot of calls like that. Do you listen to it at your house because of your family dynamic, or is there a no scanner traffic allowed?
We do not listen to it at our house. I think our house has had its share of law enforcement scanners. But, I mean, I don't know. He's still plugged in. He's still plugged into what's going on and still frustrated with, again, not being able to wrap our arms around something because we know what works. I mean, we really do know what works. It's about getting the desire to execute and not having risk-adverse folks. And I mean, I think that the number one wish for local elections is that you govern when you're there and you don't worry about whether you're going to be reelected. And that dynamic of just like governing while we're there, because we have the resources ready to go. And I hope this is a change in unsticking us on what seems to be a circular issue. I think the reason so many of us are so frustrated about homelessness is we have been walking in a circle for a while. Everyone's well-intended. I don't want to disparage the intent, but we've got to have a little more courage in what we're doing and a little more oomph in getting across the finish.
We have a new chief in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Do you think that part of what he needs to do has to be getting a handle on some of these issues and crimes and drugs, which are all interlaced with mental health and everything else, or who's the first one that needs to make a change?
He does. I mean, I'm going to lay much of the problem on our last chief. I don't think he was proactive about this at all. I think Brian Redd is. I think he pays attention. I think he's a data-driven guy. He hasn't been a chief before. I don't think that that's necessary. I think those fresh eyes might be.
He's very impressive.
I know he's a reacher-outer. He is a huge communicator. That's what he brought to the Department of Corrections. I think he listens. I don't think his ego is involved. I think he is like, I am a facilitator. I am a servant of people. So I think he's able to listen to folks. And I think he will be a part of the solution. He also, I think strategically, the mayor thought through this. He knows the state of Utah too. He has really good connections with the state. And so I think his ability to communicate will hopefully make a huge difference if we can get the council engaged and if we can get some yeses too. The one thing I will ask of the public that I think is really hard is that what I expect from I think the best decision making is twofold. You are courageous about making a bold decision, and then you know that there's a correction coming. And good decision makers have a bias towards action, but then equally so they say, I got this part wrong. And I'm just going to say, like, when people get it wrong, we need to have the grace. If in fact they're following through on their things, we need to rock and roll with people getting to things and not have it just be this snarky, online media picking at people as long as they're moving ahead. I say all that because I see Brian Redd, Chief Redd, as someone who will make choices and then adapt to the consequences or the outcomes of those choices. And I want to support any leader who's willing to make a decision.
And you bring up so many good points, and I work with Chief Red. I'm on the board of Salt Lake PD, and so I've seen both chiefs, and Chief Red, his resume, I think working at Goldman Sachs, right? He's able to understand a department and not just as an officer. Right. But I think that we're missing a big part of what's happening downtown, which is the city versus state. And back in 2008 to 2016, why was Utah known as having some of the best homeless problems? We had the least amount of homeless. We had, back in 2008, I believe it was like 157 homeless. Now we have up to 5,000. Yeah. And I can't help but think that it's when the city and the state don't want to come together and they can't even be in the same room together. That is the issue. Because I know this. I watched my dad, and he had to cross aisles and work with Rocky back then. Right. And they got it done. Yeah. And we were a poster child for the rest of the country. And I'm just trying to understand. I think maybe that's why I'm running. I'm trying to figure out what went wrong. Yeah. What's going on, right? Because now we have, I feel like we're on par to be the next Portland. And that scares me. And so, I was always taught to leave a better place for my kids, the next generation. And I don't believe Salt Lake City can give that to my children right now.
What dynamic are you seeing? Because Maura mentioned just a minute ago, the mayor earlier this week when they released those numbers saying that it was 18% higher, put a lot of blame kind of on the legislature saying this is your fault, this is your mess, clean it up. Is she right to do that, or is there blame that comes from the city as well?
I don't believe the mayor takes accountability at all. And I know that, it's the counties. If you're a leader, you've got to put it's all about putting the people in the room, the right people, the right partnerships. And I just think that the blame game it's not working. And there's no excuse, right? She's been in office for how long? There's no excuse that homelessness has gone up 18%. So no matter what she says, the numbers are showing it's not working. So that's where I feel like we have to go back to the drawing boards and say, hey, we cannot let this continue, or else we're going to lose it where we can't save it anymore.
Yeah, and I'd like to see people coming back to Salt Lake City. I saw just in the last couple of years, nightlife building in Salt Lake City. Unfortunately, we had that fire that burned down a lot of the little nightlife here on Main Street, which has been sad. I also feel like during the holidays and during sports, we get a lot of people downtown because the church has been redoing Temple Square for so long. I think a lot of families have stayed away that wouldn't normally be down there. And, there's changing dynamics with the sports. But I would like to see the city be a safe, happy space where families feel like they can come and go to entertainment, or when Temple Square opens up again, or when we're heading towards the Olympics where we're not having to bus people out and send them away because we haven't cleaned up the problem before it happens. So, yeah.
And the church opening, I don't know if you've seen the numbers of what they're expecting.
It seems massive.
I'm like, why is nobody talking about for 6 months, 7 days a week, open to the public, 30,000 people a day? Why are we not talking about, we don't have enough officers. We don't have our public safety. And that's a big reason I'm running on public safety, is that I don't believe that we're looking at 3 months from now. We need to look at 10 years from now. That's what leadership does. So that's where I think it's going to be really interesting to see in 2027 when the church opens and all these things, and because that will reflect how we are with the Olympics.
Which is a whole nother problem. I've been talking to police from different departments, whether it's Highway Patrol or you've been talking about Bear Lake. What county is that? Is that Rich County? All of a sudden, I can't think my county straight. But they just don't have enough officers to cover what they need to. So when you look about the huge influx that goes up there during the summer months at the lake, they have maybe 2 deputies working there. Highway Patrol is stretched thin, where they have even detectives going out and doing patrol shifts. So somehow we have to inspire a new generation to want to go out and be officers as well, which seems to be a bit of a problem.
We need to change the culture, and that's why I'm so passionate about law enforcement. It's like, they're our lifeline to our community. So you can say whatever you want, but if you go home right now and your house is broken into, who are you calling? So we've got to change that system, and I think it comes to how we deal with mental health. And how we train, right? Like, they're only trained to detain and not de-escalate, and that's a big factor.
I'll also just give a shout out, though. That's a change for SLCPD, right? I mean, as Liddy said, back in the day, so little conflict of interest promoting there. Little Chief Burbank action here. I mean, Salt Lake City used to train their own. They were above the state standard. They did have social workers come in. They did de-escalate. We led the nation in community policing tactics. We had a homeless deputy chief assigned. They knew him by name. We know how to do this. We've just gotten a little atrophied on it, and we haven't been practicing what we're preaching. And frankly, I think it's because capital P politics has entered into it, and we started to care about virtue signaling more than we cared about potholes in our community of life, our way of life. And I think I hear this more and more from Salt Lakers. So
And
again,
the budget reflects this, because we're in a budget deficit right now, and nobody wants to talk about that. And that's my whole thing is like, if you look at like how much they're spending on mental health resources within Salt Lake PD, I mean, you have Boise, Albuquerque, they're spending 6 times the amount, right? So it's like, okay, you can talk about all this, right? And that's where it's like, as a leader and coming and look at the budget, what are the priorities of Salt Lake? And I don't think that the current people in office right now have the right priorities to where Salt Lake City is moving. Yeah.
All right, it'll be interesting to watch. And on the nerdy side of it, from the news standpoint, I feel like sometimes we have a hard time asking questions and getting answers, and I think sometimes that helps from the department. And Chief Red has actually taken former ABC4 anchor Glenn Mills, who was over at the Corrections Department, who will be joining him at Salt Lake City Police, I believe, as Chief of Staff. I don't know if he'll be doing communications as well, but I think sometimes that arm of doing communications with the media and with the public makes a big difference too when you can answer questions. So I'm excited about that. Switching gears to another hot button topic here. Redistricting is going to happen, it looks like, here in Utah, and it has to happen fast because we've got the 2026 midterm elections coming up. Just yesterday, the 3rd District Court Judge, Diana Gibson, issued a decision saying that she was going to deny Utah lawmakers and their attorneys' request to push a pause on that, where possibly they didn't have to do the redistricting. Liddy, have you been watching and paying attention to this? Because I know Salt Lake City always is the city that gets really the brunt of the redistricting issues. If you draw a weird squiggly line, there's 4 different districts in Salt Lake City. Is that an issue you're hearing about?
Huge issue. And I keep saying, like, listen, if you want to understand Utah and Salt Lake City is the black sheep of a very conservative family, and it's treated as such. And you see that especially now. And I think this whole thing, listen, the voters voted in 2018. And that's where I'm kind of confused. Where's the transparency in all of this? How is this even, how did we even get to this spot? I think is really the worrisome thing to me, because you're cutting our district into 4 areas. So you're diluting the voices of the people. And I just think, I agree. I think this is a win for democracy right now. And I hope they can figure out a map that works for all of Salt Lake.
So, Maura, how do they do this? You also live in Salt Lake, but a lot of people are saying online they don't understand the intricacies of this. They're like, okay, we'll just bring back the map they had before. I'm assuming that the growth that's happened between the last time the map was drawn and even now changes how you have to do it, because they're always having to think forward to how many people are building homes here and where are the numbers moving. So there's a careful balance in all of this.
Yeah, I mean, what the legislature is going to double down on is this pizza pie. They believe that if you have both urban and rural interests, that somehow you're better represented. It's not something I believe in, but that has been their through line on justifying. And I'm going to say justifying because I think it's a justification. What I really appreciate about the last 3 court cases is that they're reasserting the co-equal balance between citizens and representational democracy. And the part I am sort of challenged by with the logic stream from the legislature is they rightly so are quoting this section of the Constitution that says, hey, we draw the maps. It's there. We all believe it. No one's trying to cut the 104 out. Everyone believes the legislature has a role in this. They're skipping Article 1, Section 2, which says all power is found in the people. They're skipping the 2003 Gallivan-Walker ruling that reasserted the rights of initiative petitions. They're ignoring last July 2024's ruling that says there's co-equal power. All the judge is saying is, when it comes to certain subsets of initiatives in which you're instructing your representatives, when you're going to the very order of how people represent you, you also have to listen to the people. And what all the better boundaries asserted was to say, hey, we want a commission. We want a commission of the following people. They acknowledged that the legislature would have a role in creating this commission. They acknowledged that the legislature was the end body to pass it. All we are saying is we want co-equal. We don't want to get rid of the legislative role. In fact, we honor the legislative role. The fact that the legislators going bonkers, completely out of their minds because we want co-equal power on creating the very precincts and districts in which we will choose our representation is just this sense of supermajority. Supermajorities have nothing to do with ideology. They have to do with too much groupthink for too long. Like, it's not because you're right or left, but they are offended that citizens would want to be a part of the process. And you hear this refrain when they're defending themselves. They're like, we're it. We're the 104, or the beginning and the end. We represent you. And I'm like, no, you serve me. And in the Constitution, you have to read all of the book. You can't just read the New Testament or the Old Testament. You got to read the whole thing.
You got to read them both.
But it says it in the Constitution.
It says it twice in the Constitution.
That protects citizens' initiated ballot initiatives.
Right. Which is the only reason we have initiatives.
Correct.
And the other thing is, what she is asserting, which I think this is really important, I'm going to speak to our good friend Rod Axum, who is fighting the good fight for the Republicans. But his assertion, I hear echoed and echoed again, in which it's revolutionary. Yeah. He's asserting that there's somehow she's gone rogue, right?
Should I read what he says? Yeah. It's a complete rewriting of what we have interpreted. This is Robert Axon, chairman of the Utah GOP. He says, interpreted our Constitution to be over the last 100 plus years. He notes that her interpretation was influenced by the Utah Supreme Court's ruling on the matter last year when it sided with the plaintiff in the redistricting case. He says, it's a thumb on the scale that's leaning towards judicial activism rather than just the natural progression of things.
And this is not novel. There is nothing new about this. So that's political pageantry right there. The first ruling, in fact, was in 4 years after we formed statehood. There was a ruling in 2003. And there's nothing novel about this. There's nothing new about this. This is a group of folks who didn't imagine it to be true. But this has been my first ballot initiative statewide that I did was about 25 years ago. And this was exactly the directive we were following. There is nothing original about this or new. It's just a supermajority coming to terms. I mean, you see how aggressive the legislature has been in stripping away executive power. But I would also caution citizens to not let the legislature, who I respect and I appreciate their service, and I think that they're doing a good job, but it is so important that we do not let them strip away our powers of having a co-equal role in choosing the districting, which we all voted for in 2018. And I really appreciate that the judiciary, the other thing is they're acting like they're activists. I mean, I don't know how many read this. This is a 69-page ruling. The one last year was like an 80-page ruling. That is not someone whipping off a tweet saying you stink. Like, this is not nanner, I think you suck. This is, I mean, it's 69 pages. It is very deliberate. She goes out of her way to address their concerns. This is explained. This is footnoted. This is just, I mean, we got some poor losers right now.
So how do you see this going? Because I know that a lot of the state of Utah is like, well, we're mostly a Republican state. Democratic states gerrymander as well. So if they gerrymander an eye for an eye, and we're going to do it, because it seems like now we're part of this fight that's going on across the country where everyone's trying to make sure that they have the seats needed to have the majority in Congress. And Utah may flip the balance if we flip a seat.
I feel like, if you are trying to make this, this is nonpartisan gerrymander, like when 90+% of elected officials are part of one party in this state, that's not nonpartisan. It's going to inevitably be a partisan gerrymandering, which is exactly what's going on right now. And I think that at the end of the day, the voters are the ones that are supposed to pick the politicians. The politicians are not supposed to pick the voters. So I think that at the end of the day, the voters and their voices will win with this because we voted for it. And it's going to be a fight, but I think that this will be a loss for the legislature.
All right. Has anyone heard who's on this redistricting committee this time around? Is it the same people, old people, anyone?
Yeah, I mean, they're starting with leadership. I know their first meeting happens. I mean, we were visiting with them this morning. They are already on subcommittees. They are on a clock. I mean, they're sort of on a 4-year quick clock. I'm sort of like, when they're like, oh, when they're clutching their pearls over 30 days, I'm like, well, I don't know. We passed it in 2018 and you guys flipped us off for a few years.
I don't understand.
So I think you could have planned B.
We should have had it yesterday, right?
You could also just take the nonpartisan commissions. You could just go ahead and take their recommendations.
Like, isn't that the whole point of an advisory?
Yeah, perfectly good. But if you want to reinvent your own, but they will be on it. They'll start holding meetings next week. They understand that the clock has already started, and they understand that they have committed. I mean, I should give them some credit. House and Senate leadership have committed to the timeline.
And I think you will see politics, if this does go through, you're already seeing people like Ben McAdams, former mayor here, calling donors to say, hey, if this works, then maybe I'll run again. And so I think Salt Lake City, we need great leaders. And I'm a fan of Ben McAdams. I thought he did a great job as mayor here. And so it's like, if we're able to get more good people in because we're able to have a right decision, then I'm all for it. But I think you'll see more people putting their hat in the ring because they know that it's more competitive and not biased on one way.
It'll be interesting, though, because now the sort of timeline wonkiness, right? You start the electoral clock. It's already started, so this is now in favor of the county clerk saying, hey, listen, I just got to back out my timeline. It's not going to sync up with what will certainly be an appeal to the Supreme Court. So I think the 2026 elections are going to be messy from a legal perspective. And what do you vote on and how do you vote? And I always hate when these things come up. What I won't listen to is the legislature blaming the people for asserting their rights.
Oh, no.
It's their responsibility for having not respected that vote in the first place.
So which congressional leader right now is probably sweating bullets? Is it Burgess Owens' seat that will probably go competitive again? Or what do we think will happen when this redistricting goes?
Well, I mean, remember, you said it well. It would be fair in Utah to only have a competitive seat, not a Democratic seat. That would be a fair. And the Dems are going to have a challenge fielding a good candidate. So the Mia Love, Burgess Owens, Ben McAdams seat, they were all slightly different seats.
Yes.
But that makes sense that a version of the Burgess, Mia, Ben seat is a version of the more competitive seat.
Yeah. All right. Well, it'll be exciting to watch. It'll be exciting to see a competitive seat if it happens again, too. I think that competition in our races is always a good thing. We've talked about for getting ideas out and trying to, I guess, get the will of the people. So a little competition's never a bad thing at all. Also want to talk about Congress right now. It is back in session, had a nice long August recess. They are back there fighting over all kinds of things. I heard some hearings with RFK Jr. today. They're talking Epstein still. A lot of votes going on that are happening. Should we be spending the time that we are on these Epstein arguments? Is this something people deserve answers to, or do we need to be digging into the budget, Maura?
We need to be digging into the budget, but let's just talk about why we're talking about Epstein. We're talking about Epstein because Trump very famously made it an issue, and now he doesn't want to deal with it. We're talking about it because it's titillating and partisan. So, those aren't great reasons. But, we lament every year. Apparently, every year we're surprised there's a budget due on September 30th. Tradition. Yeah. We're like, what? When did this happen? We have 12 congressional working days between now and when the budget needs to be passed.
And
12 days.
97% of the Epstein files that they released this week, 30,000?
Yeah.
Those already been public.
Yes.
So, it's a kind of a moot point, right? And it's kind of, what are you distracting from? And also, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something in there. If you guys are both sides, right? If this is Republican and Democratic trying to hide stuff, then the people should know. So stop making an issue about it. Just release it.
Release it and get over it.
But I think it just shows how dysfunctional politics is, especially on the federal level, because this not only is going to affect specific groups, it's going to affect all of us. Because if they can't figure out a deal, we're all going to be paying for it.
And I think the problem that we're coming to now is to get something passed, they're actually going to have both sides agree on something. They were able to push through Trump's big, beautiful bill earlier, but now both sides are going to have to sit down and talk together. Do you think it's possible, or are we going to get to the holidays where people are like, I wonder if I have a check coming in? And
well, I'm confused because I feel like there must be more in what's going on, because it should have been easy to pass. So that's where I need to go in and look into all of this again and say, hey, what's going on? But I think that this just shows how politics is today, and no one wants to sit down together.
I mean, what they're saying right now is they should be able to get a continuing resolution, right? But it's still just patchworking it. Yeah. And the other thing is it's just going to be negotiated cuts because, as you suggest, there's now a handful. There's probably 6-8 people who can play the balancing act about am I in or am I out, because they're going to be down to every single vote. It's still not going to be a budget that serves folks. I mean, it's still sort of all just about the lowest common denominator of politics to get it over a finish line. And now this is not new. This is what we do every single time. And it eventually got to stop. But the problem is the stopping is going to happen when we've reached this new level in America where I say, I don't have to do what you asked because 3 times ago you didn't do. And if we continue to reach back and have it not be about public service, but in fact our tribes, right? Yep. I mean, this is just tribal warfare, and we're acting at that base of a level when we have our conversations. Yeah. And I think it's frustrating. Liddy said this over and over. What's frustrating to me is this is prevalent in local politics, but the reality is even in national politics, our overlap is huge. It's 60, 70% of things that basically we could come to a pretty easy agreement, which just means we're not getting it done for other selfish base level
It's a very
issues.
selfish way of being politics and all of that.
You just don't want someone else to get the win that seems like it. And I feel like we're at the point, too, where if you want to get something accomplished if the president even wanted to get something accomplished, he probably had to have that done while he still had control of the Senate and the House, because we're already looking into whatever they vote on now. They're like, well, I can't do that and help you, and I can't talk to you because we've got an election coming up, and everyone's already looking at the midterms, which is frustrating. Yeah.
I think we need definitely more transparency. I think it's local, all the way up to the top. And I think that we are in a huge transparency problem right now around the country.
Yeah, for sure. As we look forward in the weeks ahead, Maura, you were mentioning that you were up on the Capitol Hill today here in Utah, and the special session, even though it hasn't been called, is coming.
We hear that the special session that hasn't been called,
an extra special session,
is still planned, penciled in for September 15th. It had a series of issues that they felt like needed to be addressed right away, which isn't redistricting. This is something that had been deliberated on before the redistricting ruling came out. So what we're hearing, rumor is that it'll still be on the 15th and it'll still have a call that is not the redistricting. So one would expect that another special session would also be called around the district.
So that'll be the extra special. So what will they be dealing with in the regular special session?
They have a handful. I mean, the call really isn't made until the end, but I know they want to address the Great Salt Lake. That's been discussed, the urgency around that. There's a couple of cleanup bills, which I'm a little critical about using a special session for cleanup bills. I think there should be some extraordinary things, and then some transportation things that they just need. And some of it is the urgency is you need to keep some projects going, and there's always some drafting that you want to redraft. So most of it seems pretty technical and serious minded by and large. We'll see. There's always a couple things thrown out there.
Yeah. Is there anything you're paying attention to as we're heading into the special session and watching your own election come up, which will be here quicker than you think?
I think obviously like the homeless thing is a huge thing for me, mental health. So I'm always looking into ways that we can do better for our state and how the legislature, how they want to go with it. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm looking at how I can get to the Great Salt Lake. When you mentioned that, it brought up like a bone that I'm picking in my marriage right now. I really want to go swim at the Great Salt Lake. Wow. And my husband always asks me what I want to do on the weekends. And now that our children are not at home, I feel like we should just do whatever we want. And what I would like to do is go relive my like 80s childhood fantasies and swim in the lake. And he's always like, why? And
What's
he doesn't want to go
like
with me.
For you? Is it like salt floating? Is it like brine shrimp shores?
I don't know. Like,
what are you picturing in your
feel
mind?
like I want to like run through the water so I can get deep enough that I can actually like go swim and just like feel like I'm in the ocean.
Good.
I'm sure we could set this up.
I know. Is there anyone? Please contact me if you want to go play. But he's like, it's gross. There's flies, and there are. But I just feel like maybe if we could get past that, we'd be like, why are we wasting our time? Like going to the ocean because we've got the Great Salt Lake we could go swim in.
And then maybe you can start like a Great Salt Lake skincare with
that's
salt,
nice.
You know,
yeah, that's right.
Like the Dead Sea stuff.
Yeah, that's your next calling.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to come with me, I'm planning a trip to the Great Salt Lake, and I feel like we're headed towards the shoulder season where there's not as many spiders and bugs, so anyhow, hit me up if you want to do it. But thank you both for joining us today. And we will be talking about the special and the extra special session as they come up in the next couple of weeks. Great. Good luck with your campaign. If people want to know more about what you're doing, where do they find you right now?
You can find me at electliddy.com.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about us, and we'll be back again next week.